Hey everyone, today I'm going to be discussing if I regret going to medical school and becoming a doctor. Being a junior doctor has been really interesting. So if that sounds like something you want to know more about, then please stay tuned. I suddenly just decided to be a YouTube fave, but here we are.
You're not about to go on this flight, sis. I was interrogated for just under 2 hours.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's Hani. I'm a junior doctor from London. I make videos on skincare, being a doctor, medicine, and like loads of other things, all the things in between. Today I want to talk about my kind of experiences of being a doctor and if I think it was worth going to medical school. I have a lot of strong feelings on the subject. This is a question people ask me a lot in my personal life, so I just thought I'd answer it here. And also because a lot of people reach out to me on Twitter especially asking about if I can like look at their personal statement or help them with their medical school application, which I'm very happy to do. Admittedly, I've become so busy and I don't know how much I'll be able to help, but historically I did used to read, I probably read 200, 300, 400 personal statements over the past 4 years. And people would always ask me, when they kind of were messaging me for help, they'd always ask, what's medical school like? Do you think I would enjoy it? Like, would you recommend it? It's not really until I started working as a doctor that I've now formed very strong opinions on it, and kind of some of the things to be aware of, and how like there's definitely a dream that's sold to you a little bit. And then a quick disclaimer, this is based on my experience as a junior doctor in the UK in the NHS, which is the UK's health service. You know, my experiences aren't going to apply to everyone, and this video is obviously a reflection of my experiences. And then I've just written some of the questions that I thought I should answer on my phone, so if I look at my phone, that's why. And then also, if like this generates more questions, I'm very happy to do like a Q&A. So the first thing I thought I should answer was why I applied, because people would always ask me when they ask for help with applying, they always ask like, why did you apply, what was your reasoning? And for me, honestly, like it was I wasn't one of those kids who was like, oh, you know, I wanted to be a doctor my whole life, you know, my first word was medicine, or you know, like we all come across those people, especially if you're in the medical field or if you're at medical school. For me, that absolutely wasn't the case. The reason I applied was because like, okay, so I think there are a few elements to it. So one was I had good grades, and I knew that like the people who tended to have good grades wanted to apply for medical school, which is such a dumb reason, but it's true. Like I thought I should make the most of having good grades, do you know what I mean, and try and use them. And then I think everyone classically says in any personal statement I've ever read, there's always some kind of combination of I like science, I'm a people person. And while that was true, like I liked all my subjects at school, science was one of them. I liked all the academic subjects. I was really bad at things like art and PE and stuff, but yeah, I like science. I could literally talk for England. That's one thing that is a big problem when editing videos. Like I literally just talk constant. Anyway, but yeah, so chatty person, good at science, you know, medicine. But I think also beyond that, if I interrogate that a little bit further, definitely growing up in a working class family where my parents were immigrants from another country, they came to the UK to try and, you know, improve the quality of life we had, their children, you know, they wanted us to have the chances that they didn't have. And so that obviously then, and I feel like a lot of people can relate to the story, that kind of then feeds into what you think you should be doing. So it's kind of a combination of those things. And the other thing that I want to touch on is if you come from like a certain background, you don't actually know about other jobs. Like growing up has been so strange because I finally acquired some of this like social and cultural capital where I actually know about other jobs. Like there are so many like things like being an actuary or like an insurance underwriter or working in PR and media and stuff like that. Like I didn't know those were things, and I feel like a lot of working class people can relate, because like growing up, or like, you know, a hedge fund manager, or you know, there's loads of random jobs that you just wouldn't know about if you're from like a community where like it's like quite working class, not many people went to university. I genuinely thought there was like engineer, doctor, lawyer, teacher, you know, working in a shop, having a, you know, running a restaurant. Like I just didn't know there were all these other like abstract jobs, like working in copywriting or publishing or whatever. Like I just didn't know about these jobs, and I feel like that's the case for a lot of people. And so for me, like I wanted to do a degree that very obviously led to a job. I really liked English at school, and I did English A-level, English literature, and I like loved English. That was by far my favorite subject, probably the subject I was best at as well. But like I just thought, if I do an English degree, what job am I going to do? And that was genuinely a big roadblock for me. Like I just thought, oh, what job would I do? Obviously there's hella jobs you could do. Like I could have gone in publishing, I could have, you know, become a journalist, I could have done, you know, could have worked in PR, could have worked in advertising, could have done like any number of things. But in my head it was just like, there's no job called English. Do you know what I mean? There's no job that obviously associates itself with having an English degree, which is why I didn't do it. Not to say that like I regret not doing English, but it's just something to think about. And I definitely think like there's definitely some middle class privilege in like actually knowing about other jobs and stuff. But yeah, so is being a doctor like what I expected? In short, no, not at all. The job is literally miles away from what I thought it would be. I also recognize that I literally started working as a junior doctor in a pandemic. So obviously that's going to change my experiences of it, but even so, like, I'm not gonna lie, it's just not what I expected at all. So I'm gonna answer two questions. I'm gonna start by answering the question, what are the worst bits about being a doctor, before I answer the next question, which is what are the best bits about being a doctor. Also, I think some people might be thinking about the process of applying for medical school. I want to give you all the facts, but I want to leave you feeling a little bit optimistic, just in case that is what you're considering applying for, because I don't want to be a total hater. Although I'm saying that like I'm going to say really bad things. I'm not going to say bad things, I'm just going to give you my honest opinion, which is a combination of some good things and some bad things. So I'm going to start with the negative things first. Okay, what are the worst bits about being a doctor? So one thing I'll say now is it's not a job you do for money, like at all. Being a junior doctor in the UK, I literally get paid, the amount I get paid is really quite ridiculous. I get paid £13.51 an hour. I might be wrong on like the pennies, but it's something around that. And like at medical school, I got paid about £50 an hour to teach kids. So just to give you a sense of, you know, financially what's happening. And it's not a job you do for money, because for £13.50, you could be doing jobs with a lot less mental and emotional stress and getting the same amount of money. So it's just, I need to start there. If you're going into it for money, don't, especially not in the UK. I don't know how in other countries, I know you can get paid a lot more, but in the UK, that's not how it is. And I don't want to give this false impression of £13.51 is how much everyone earns. Obviously it goes up the longer you're a doctor, so you will get to a stage where you're on like quite a good amount of money, but initially as a junior doctor you're not getting paid very much at all. And for me, the reason I bring up the finances, I don't want to sound ungrateful, because I'm super grateful to have a job in a pandemic, but the reason for me the finances are important is because, you know, as I say, coming from like a working class family, like I still financially support my family, and doing so on such a low salary where you're doing so many hours is not easy. So yeah, that's kind of my perspective. So I think for people who, I think a lot of people have like this really misguided perception, a lot of people in my family do as well, my extended family, where they think I'm like raking it in, like earning loads and loads, and that's just not the case. And I think a lot of like kids from poorer backgrounds fall into that trap of thinking I want to be a doctor because I'll earn lots of money. And if that's why you want to do it, I would really say don't. And not in the UK. Obviously in other places, as I say, I don't know if it's different, but in the UK, no, you're not going to earn loads of money. And if you do start earning like decent amounts, it's not going to be for a long time. So if that's your reason for wanting to apply, then don't. Like, it's as simple as that. The other thing that I think is a really bad reason to apply for medicine and train as a doctor is the kind of the social payoff and like the social respect of, oh, you're a doctor or whatever. Let me tell you right now, that's in the top 3 worst reasons to apply for medical school. First of all, literally none of my patients know I'm a doctor. Let's start there. I wear scrubs to work, but because of COVID, like almost everyone wears some equivalent of scrub looking type things, because they want people to wear like quite hygienic clothing. And yeah, literally none of my patients think I'm a doctor, to like a ridiculous degree. The reason I know none of them think I'm a doctor is because we have a delirium screen, which is some questions you ask if you think your patient is delirious. And the questions are like, do you know where we are? You know, what's your name? What's your date of birth? Do you know roughly what time it is today? And then one of the questions is, what job am I doing? And they're meant to look at you and kind of take the visual cues and see if they can figure out what you're doing. Because obviously you're wearing I'm obviously wearing a stethoscope, I'm wearing scrubs, I've got a badge that says Dr. Hani, whatever. Either they remember from your introduction, or they look at you and they pick up what you're doing from the cues, because there's a lot of visual cues to suggest you're a doctor. The fact that I've had a whole conversation with them, telling them what medicine I'm going to start them on and whatever. And like unfailingly, they will always say nurse. And sometimes they say, you know, I actually got model once, which was nice, low-key. But yeah, none of them have ever said doctor. Maybe, I'm thinking like surely one must have, but I can't even remember one. And we're talking like 300, 400, 500 patients. And I just don't even know what that is. So I don't know if that's because, you know, I look young, maybe they think, which would be, I guess, you know, a compliment in some ways. Is it because I'm a black female and people don't expect that? I don't know, but I know actually probably definitely is a big part of it, because I'm sure it doesn't really happen nearly as much to my male colleague. Yeah, because I guess being a nurse is quite gendered, right? You would always assume a nurse is female, and maybe you assume a doctor is male. But yeah, so any kind of social payoff or respect or whatever they get from being a doctor, actually non-existent in some cases. And then also, do you know how much work you have to do to become a doctor? The whole process of applying is long af. medical school, long af, hella exams, hella Oscar, like just so much going on there. You become a doctor, you're doing so much work, just so someone can occasionally be like, oh, well done, doctor, like thank you so much for everything. You like, no, like I promise you that there's a massive mismatch between any social payoff you think you get and the amount of work you actually have to do. So if you're doing it because, you know, the pride or ego or whatever of being called doctor, non-existent. The other thing is, in the UK we don't have a culture of being called, I know Americans have this big thing of like you call someone doctor, whatever their surname is. In the UK, no, we don't really have that. The consultants, who are the older doctors, I think it's the equivalent of an attending in America, would get called doctor, whatever, but everyone else generally gets called by their first name, which is fine. I'm happy, like that's fine. So the patient's not recognizing me as a doctor at all actually was quite problematic once. I'm obviously not going to say any identifiable patient information, but I had this patient who she had really, really bad cellulitis, which is an infection of like the soft tissues in her leg. And her leg was just getting worse and worse and worse. We're doing everything. We were giving her loads of like tablets to take the water off. We were giving her loads of antibiotics. Her leg just wasn't getting better. And we thought, okay, maybe we're giving the wrong antibiotic. And then what we did was we did a wound culture where we just took a swab from the wound and grew it in the lab. And then when we grew it in the lab, it grew a very specific bug. And that specific bug was sensitive to a specific antibiotic. So I was like, okay, amazing. That's why, you know, your leg wasn't getting better. You were on the wrong antibiotic. Take this one now. Stop taking the other one. Take this one. And then I came to see her a couple of days later and her leg just wasn't getting better. It was still getting worse. And at that point I was really confused because I was like, we literally figured out exactly what is causing the cellulitis on your leg. Like, I don't really understand why the antibiotic isn't helping and your bloods are actually all getting worse. Even thinking about it makes me go crazy. So did she not say, oh, I know you told me to stop taking the other one, but I thought I'd run it by the doctor? Sis really said, I know you told me to stop taking it, but I thought I'd run it by the doctor first. Sis, that's me. I'm the doctor. Oh my god. That was the day I was like, okay, do you know what? Like, I actually don't care that no one thinks I'm a doctor, but it was actually hazardous at this moment in time. Like, I'm not gonna lie, that was a moment where I was just deep to my whole life. There's so many instances. And there was another time where speaking to a patient relative, and it was a really, really sad situation, but then the relative was just like, no offense, but can I speak to the doctor? Like, can you know, I want to speak to someone like official about this. And that one was obviously like quite awkward because it was like, that's literally me. And anyway, and then the guy was really apologetic and like embarrassed, but it was just, I don't know what signals I'm sending off. I really don't. Anyway, I remember being quite like emotional that day as well because it was like quite a sad situation. And also like, it's horrible breaking that news to someone. And then it definitely took me out of it a little bit for the person to be like, no offense, but can I speak to a doctor? Anyway, it's just like a thing. Anyway, so in short, becoming a doctor for this clout that you think your clout does not pay the bills, first of all, and actually more often than not, you're probably not even gonna get the clout. So with the way the UK is set up and people calling you your first name and not doctor. So, and also we don't wear, I don't know about American culture, but we don't wear white coats and things like that. One of the other things about being a doctor that's quite difficult, and to be fair, I didn't know this going in, but I didn't realise just how much it would happen, and I'll say why, but the timing. So if I'm working a 9 to 5, that honestly means nothing as far as I'm concerned. You can't necessarily make plans. Obviously we're in COVID, so there's no plans now anyway, but if I'm working a 9 to 5, I can't have plans with someone at 6 because realistically, if it gets to 4:50 and a patient becomes really unwell, I have to now deal with that. And that's fine. I don't mind doing that. Like, I really don't mind staying late to stabilize a patient. But the problem is there's just so much understaffing all the time. Like, all the time we're consistently understaffed. And I don't know if it's just my hospital and if I'll have a better experience next year where I'm working in a different hospital, but it's just, the job is staffed to, I don't want to say dangerous, but it's completely understaffed all the time. And so you're always staying late to just do important things that you shouldn't have to stay late to because the minimum number of people on your ward is meant to be like 5 or whatever, but it's never 5, it's always below 5 because there's just not enough doctors. The other thing is, you can't just be like, F it, I'll just go home and deal with it tomorrow, because the stakes are so high in your job. Like, if you go home, that could be the difference between life and death sometimes. It's not always that dramatic, but do you know what I mean? It is sometimes. So yeah, so if I do a 50-hour week, that's not really a 50-hour week because almost always you stay a little bit late to deal with stuff. And I used to be really bad at this. I used to leave work 3 hours late every single day. And then it's like this mental obligation because someone else's health is associated with your action and inaction. So it's like a lot to take on. And then the thing with the rota, this was one thing that I thought was really cruel. Like, you just realize as a junior doctor, you feel very dispensable. Like, no one gives a F word. I was gonna swear, but I'm not gonna swear. Because when I got COVID, for example, and I told them I got COVID, they were like, the person I spoke to sounded pissed off. They were like, oh my God, when did you test positive? When does your isolation end? When can you come back to work? And it was like, never mind the fact that I have a serious respiratory illness. Like, ask me how I'm doing, ask me if I'm okay. But because loads of people got COVID at the same time, they were just pissed off. Like, they were just annoyed that someone else is off work that I now have to find cover for. Just to give you an example of the atmosphere being super, super toxic, a doctor had put in a request for a CT scan and had said in the request form, could we have a CT scan of like this body part? I think the patient might have maybe epididymitis, maybe orchitis, so like some acute infection-y type things of like the male genitals. And the person who scanned it then they report it. So they, not only do they send you the scan, sometimes they'll send you a report of what was in the scan. And the report was so cruel. It was just like, you bloody idiot. How did you get through medical school if you can't even tell that what the person you brought down had an enormous femoral hernia? So it was just a hernia the whole time. You're such an idiot. Take your consider retraining or give your medical degree back, you absolute idiot, or something like that. It was something so rude. And the reason I was triggered reading it is because if you're a junior doctor, a lot of the time you get asked to request scans that aren't even your idea. Because sometimes you'll look at something and you'll have an opinion, but your consultant, your attending, will be like, can you request a scan? And even if you don't agree with it, you have to do it. But it means that like, when whoever it is doesn't agree with you, you're the one who gets in trouble. And they're always saying, why do you want this scan? What do you think it's going to achieve? And it's like, I didn't request the scan. This is, do you know what I mean? I'm just carrying out orders. And there's a lot of like, you know the phrase, don't shoot the messenger? There's a lot of shooting the messenger. And if you're a junior doctor, you're always the messenger. Like, it's so awful. Like, you're always taking heat for stuff that was not your decision. And it's just like, even thinking about it makes my blood boil. Like, there's so many times that people get shouted at or told off or whatever, and it's like, why would you do this? It's a waste of resources, waste of time. Who told you to x-ray this? Is obviously, it's like, bro, this wasn't my idea. Do you know what I mean? Like, take it up with the right person. Okay, so now let's say some good things. So one of the good things is, you know, it's lifelong learning. You're always learning something new. Medicine, even as you learn it, by the time you finish medical school, like, a lot of the stuff has changed. You know, there's new drugs coming out all the time. We learn how things work. The mechanisms by which we treat different diseases changes. So I quite like that. I like learning things. So it's nice to have a job that's intellectually stimulating. The other thing is, I love the NHS in principle. I love the idea that it doesn't matter who you are, what you need, you can just rock up to a hospital and just get looked after and treated for free. I see like the most horrifying posts from people who live in America, and they'll be like, oh, I got shot but I got in a taxi because it costs like $1,000 to call an ambulance, or something, like the craziest tweets. And I'm just so grateful for the NHS. It doesn't matter who you are, although it's definitely getting dismantled a little bit at the moment, but it doesn't matter who you are or what's wrong with you, like, all your treatment is free. And I'm just like, that's literally amazing. And even though the service isn't as good as it should be sometimes, in principle, it's such an amazing idea. The other thing I love about my job is no 2 days are the same. Literally, like, there's just the amount of things you'll be doing in the job. There's like loads of admin parts of the job where you're typing and doing stuff on a computer. There's like really practical bits of the job where like you can be in theatre and stitching and stuff like that, and doing loads of procedures, you know, talking to people, teaching patients about their health conditions. I don't know, like, there's just so many different things. Like, you honestly, like, no 2 days are even slightly the same. There's no routine to it. I don't know what I'll be doing each day. It's actually quite exciting because obviously it just depends on what happens with the patient. So that's one thing I really love. And then there are like really miraculous moments of medicine. So one of the things that I'm always amazed by it is the effects of, so when someone's in type 2 respiratory failure, so depending on, you know, what conditions they have, there's some lung conditions where people will be like retaining a lot of carbon dioxide. So when you breathe, you take in oxygen and you breathe out carbon dioxide. And in type 1 respiratory failure, it's where you're not taking in enough oxygen. And in type 2 respiratory failure, it's you're not taking in enough oxygen, but you also don't get rid of enough carbon dioxide. So there's too much carbon dioxide in your blood. Now, when someone's in type 2 respiratory failure, and they've got really, really high levels of carbon dioxide in their blood, like, they're literally like comatose sometimes. Like, they are super, super drowsy. Sometimes they're conked out completely. Sometimes they literally look unconscious. They're very, very sleepy, very, very drowsy. They're essentially being poisoned by the amount of carbon dioxide in their blood. And there's a couple of machines that we have that can clean, you know, a couple of breathing machines that help them get rid of carbon dioxide. And you put that on them and you give it a couple of days and they wake up and they're just like a different person. They're so wide awake. They say they feel really, really alert, and it's like you literally went from someone who looked basically dead to someone who's like super, super alert and vibrant. And that's an occasion where it's like, bloody hell, like, you know, medicine really is something. Another example is, I'm just thinking about a patient I had who was, obviously you don't, the other thing is you don't know patients, you don't know what's normal for them, but he was really, really confused, trying to escape the whole time, and we didn't know what was wrong with him. So we did loads of investigations. We figured out that he had a bacterial infection, and we gave him antibiotics. The way the antibiotics resolved the delirium, like, it was like a different man. And then he was even saying, oh my god, like, I don't know what was wrong with me, I'd felt not myself. He brought us chocolates, it was really, really sweet, and he just felt bad. But it was like, all of that delirium, the acute confusion, was purely as a result of his infection, and we gave him antibiotics, and then he literally did a 180 and was a different super, super pleasant, super charming man. And it was like, wow, like, sometimes like modern medicine is actually like quite miraculous. So those are a couple of occasions where it's like, okay, wow, medicine is actually really, really cool. Another thing actually was, I think it's coming up to a year now, but I read this statistic that's like, oh, I've written it down. If someone has a cardiac arrest in the street, so their heart just stops, they only have a 10.8% survival rate if you do CPR on them. And this was like so scary, but I was walking with one of my best mates who was also a doctor, and we just heard like a bang, and we looked, and there was a man on the floor, and the man had had a cardiac arrest. And it was, even thinking about it, it's terrifying, it was so scary. We did CPR on him in the street, and we did mouth to mouth and all of that stuff. This was literally it was only just before COVID, but it was before COVID, so obviously we wouldn't do mouth to mouth now, you're not meant to anyway. And we did CPR on him, and I did mouth to mouth, and we did chest compressions and all the different bits. And he lived, and he was totally fine. He went to hospital and he survived. And now learning that the survival rate of CPR on someone who's had a cardiac arrest outside of hospital is only 10%. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was very, very, it was like so serendipitous. Like, it was like an act of God or whatever, that we were walking by in that moment and we were able to help him. So that for me is like one of those things where it's like, if I didn't go to medical school, I wouldn't have had those skills. So I'm really, really grateful that I do have those skills. And also, everyone learn how to do CPR. It's so easy, and clearly it saves lives. The other thing is, I do like how you develop like quite a few different skills. You end up this quite well-rounded person in medicine, where you're, you know, quite good at science, you've got some good like intellectual skills, and then you've also got like lots of soft skills, because you're always talking to people and explaining things and teaching things and learning how to be tactful and, you know, present things well, but also like learning some physical skills, so like practical procedural things. And I did a thoracentesis, what's it called, thoracentesis, well, I call it thoracentesis the other day, which is basically, I had a patient who had he had lots of fluid pressing on his lungs. So I got, obviously this was under supervision, but like I got a needle like that big and put it in his back and drained all this fluid out. And like, thinking about it, it's like, that's actually crazy. I literally put a needle that big into someone's back without like puncturing their lung, and like got rid of 2 liters of fluid that was just sitting on the poor guy's chest. And that was another moment where I was like, okay, like, I love that I'm learning how to do things like that, especially because I'm not like a person who's good with their hands. So yeah, like, sometimes I'm like, okay, but it's quite cool. And then another really good thing is, like, when I speak about money and how I earn £13.50 an hour, whatever, like, obviously that's not a reflection of how much you'll always earn as a doctor. Your pay does increase quite gradually. You know, there's also good career progression. You know, you don't have to apply for different jobs, you can always progress within your career as a doctor and just become like more and more qualified and more senior, which is quite cool. And it's, you know, good job security, especially now in a pandemic. Like, I can't take that for granted. Like, loads of people are out of work at the moment, and I understand how that's really, really difficult for your mental health as well as like financially. So I am also obviously grateful to have a job that has good job security. So thoughts overall, there's loads more negative aspects to the job than I thought, to be honest. The amount that's asked from you and the amount you have to deliver versus like the payoff in terms of like financially, socially, all of those things, it doesn't match up. You're doing way more than you're getting out. So there definitely has to be an element of sincerity. Like, you have to have that element of, I'm genuinely just doing this because I want to be someone who helps other people. And if you have that, that's fine, and that will carry you through. Because if it's like a an input output risk benefit analysis, whatever, like, you're just not gonna, you can't see both my hands, it just doesn't match up, it just doesn't work. So there has to be some altruistic element of, I'm partially here because, or in large part here because I want to be a good person. Because your peers, if you're at medical school, I'm guessing you had quite good grades, your peers who go into finance or whatever, they're going to be out earning you. I imagine those jobs can be very stressful, but less emotional stress maybe. I have no idea, but I would presume. So there has to be some element of I'm doing this because it's a good thing to do. And I think if you have that, that will carry you through. The other thing is, I know that I'm like a very resilient person. Like as I mentioned in another video, I literally worked full-time while I was at medical school. I feel like my life has been like quite hard in some ways. So not to feel sorry for myself, because I feel like loads of people have had hard lives, but I feel like it's made me quite a resilient person. So I feel like I put up with a lot before I crumble. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. And if I think about the job, like the medicine, if I think about the medicine itself, I do really enjoy the medicine. It's a lot of the other stuff that I don't like. So, you know, the stuff with the understaffing and not feeling protected and, you know, all these other things, if I think about them, they're not actually medicine, they're administrative issues or staffing issues and things like that. And those are the bits that I really dislike. But the medicine itself, I actually do really enjoy. So yeah, overall, would I recommend it to other people? Yes and no. I think it really depends on the kind of person you are, and it's absolutely not a job that you should be doing for anyone else. Like if I think about, my dad would have loved to see me be a doctor, but my dad passed away before I graduated, so do you know what I mean? So that's really sad. So so obviously that's really sad, but also it's just a reminder to, it's not something you should be doing for other people. Other people won't be with you forever. So you should be doing it for yourself. If you're doing it because you think you'll make money, you're not really gonna make money, initially anyway, like not very much. So that's also a bad reason to do it. But I think if you have the right intentions and you're doing it because you want to do a job that's fulfilling, you want to do a job where every day is different and it keeps you on your toes and you never get bored and you're never looking at the clock waiting for the day to go, you want to learn new things all the time, I think those are really good reasons to do it. And to help other people, I think that's another really good reason to do it. So yeah, those are my thoughts on being a doctor in the UK and if I regret it and if it was worth it. I hope you enjoyed the video. A bit different from my usual skincare, but I'm trying to, you know, keep things mixed, you know, keep everyone on their toes. So if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment. I'll try and get back to as many comments as I can, although I don't know how many that will be, to be honest. And yeah, let me know what other videos you want to see from me, and take care everyone, bye.
Yeah, dirty. How we let it get like this, I don't know.